I've tried filming this specific wrap-up like 4 times now, and I've gotten halfway every single time now, and if I don't get through this one, I'm suing and I'm quitting. Also, people started subtweeting me on Twitter this afternoon, and like, I don't have time for that, okay? I have chemistry homework. At first I was like, I was like scared, and I was like running around like covering fires. Is that an expression? I was running around watering fires? Bro, what's the expression? Managing fires? Anyway, I was doing that thing that you do when people start hating you on book Twitter. And then I realized I have too much swag for this. But also, I now have the award of being able to say that I was involved in a book Twitter scandal. So, scandal. Psh. Today we're going to be talking about the books that I read in July. I read a considerable amount, not that many, for some of y'all who are crazy. The first book that I read in the month of July was Radio Silence by Alice Oseman. I ended up giving Radio Silence 3.5 stars. I did enjoy it. I'm sure you know what Radio Silence is about. It's very similar to Fangirl and Eliza and Her Monsters. I ended up not giving this one a very high rating because I had such high expectations that they ended up being a little bit missed, in the sense that I really was going into it thinking I was going to relate to a really high level, because I go to a school in which college is incredibly important, and in this novel, college is also really highlighted. It follows a character whose main goal in the majority of her life has been to go to Cambridge, and at my school, it's very similar. It's like very hardcore college oriented, and that's bad, I understand, but it's the way we are, and I personally am not that mad about it. I mean, sometimes I have depression about it. I totally understand that school isn't for everyone, but personally, I want to go to school, and I know that I probably will like school, and school is for me, so I didn't relate to any of the characters, which was kind of an issue. You know, like, I want to be like, yeah, fuck school, but I like school, brag. I'm kind of an academic bitch, what can I say? That's so embarrassing, oh my god. And also the abuse in this novel, it includes, you know, a parent that is very abusive to their child. I personally thought was not very realistic because of the fact that I live in an area where like school is like your holy grail. There's also parents that like get really caught up in that and do end up, you know, mentally abusing their kids, and I don't know if it's super well represented. Like, this felt too extreme to the point where like it was like, okay, like that's not how it actually do be, because it do be like that sometimes, as Scooby-Doo once said, do be. The next book that I read in the month of July is A Game of Thrones. There's a video on my channel talking about like what exactly this book is and like why I liked it and shit. It's kind of like a really bad video though, so I don't know if I want to tell you to go watch that video. This book, I will say, I need to highlight the trigger warnings right now. If you are uncomfortable with rape, do not read this book. There is so much rape and it's like graphic. If you're uncomfortable with violence, with grotesque describing of heads getting cut off, legs being cut off, people getting impaled, don't read this book. It's just very grim, dark, and violent, and it's an adult fantasy. But I just personally thought that the story itself, where you have so many points of views weaving together to create this storyline, is really interesting. I really love being in a new fantasy world. I've been struggling to find a fantasy world that I really do enjoy. Again, if you like fantasy and you can do with the trigger warnings, I highly recommend you pick it up. It feels big and it feels like a huge commitment. It's worth it. All you guys be tweeting about the thick bitches, but this is the ultimate hottie right here, so treat her with respect. The next books that I read this month were actually graphic novels, and it was the Amulet graphic novel. This was like a fat throwback, bro. So if you don't know, my account, my first ever booktube account, got hacked I think around 2013, 2014, and a lot of my videos were deleted, but I was able to salvage some of my videos, and this review is one of the videos that I was able to salvage. So this series means a lot to me, not only just on booktube, but just in general. This is one of my favorite graphic novel series of all times. It's high fantasy as well. Amulet is the story of a girl called Emily, and her brother and her mother move into a new home after their father passes away, which I know sounds really cliche. The first book might be a little bit cliche, might be a little bit juvenile and wholesome, but it gets really dark as the series continues. Emily's a stonekeeper. What you are when you're a stonekeeper is that you have a stone that has this sort of power. It's just like a power. But the thing is, the series really plays on the idea that when you have power, you have to pay a price for it, and the price for it is that you kind of get power hungry, and the stone kind of forces you to become power hungry. But also, in the first book, her mother gets taken, which I know, very unique, never been done before. The mother gets taken, and she and her brother need to go and get her. It's a fun graphic novel. If you're behind on your Goodreads goal, which I am, then I highly recommend them. There's 8 books, so I'm just enjoying myself. I'm gonna keep reading these bad boys. I gave these 3 books 5 stars. It's both because of their nostalgic tie to me, but also because they're good, okay? It is a really good fantasy story. The world is really cool, it's unique, it's nothing like you've seen before. The art is beautiful. The art is beautiful, and I highly recommend. The next book that I read this month or last month was Educated by Tara Westover. I think I'm gonna make a whole video on this. I had to read this for school, which is so freaking depressing because it means that school's coming. I gave it 3 stars. I was about to give it 2, and then I was like, it's someone's life. I'm not about to say I don't like to someone's life. That's the problem with memoirs, autobiographies and biographies. I don't want to be like, your life story, like, I don't like it. I think the reason I didn't give this book like 4 or 5 stars like everyone else is giving it is because I was often skeptical, and not because I like didn't believe her, but because I do believe that what she goes through might have warped her memory, or she's embellishing it because it is a memoir and you need to make money off of books. This is the story of Tara Westover, who lives in a really survivalist family, which is basically the family that's like frick doctors, frick the government, everyone's the Illuminati, which really reminded me of like 7th grade boys. I don't know, for me in 7th grade, there was that weird phase where all the boys were like, everything's the Illuminati. This is actually a lot worse than 7th grade boys, which I know sounds crazy. Like, what can get worse than 7th grade boys? These parents. Tara Westover kind of goes with that for 17 years, and then she realizes after 17, she's like, maybe I want to go to school. And she studies a lot for the ACT and gets a 28. But like, that's really good for someone who doesn't know what a scantron is when they come in to take the ACT. That is an absolute savage mode move. I think there wasn't the discussion of the fact that you don't not go to school for 17 years and receive minimal schooling. Like, she didn't know how to use variables at the age of 16. And you don't not go to school and understand the school system and the way to conform to school and then ultimately go to Cambridge. She was gifted, and that was never discussed in this book. It's mind-blowing and it's so inspiring, but I think there should have been a discussion of the fact she's not very normal. Like, that's not normal. And I'm sure people know that it's not normal, but I was looking for that discussion. Additionally, I found some of the plot points constantly repetitive. Like, they're constantly getting hurt, and then I feel like the lesson is constantly the same lesson. The shit that this family goes through is insane, and the fact that the power of God is what gets them to survive, like, blows my mind. The next book that I read this month was Maresi. This was a pleasant surprise. I gave this book a 4.5 stars. God really be on my side. Maresi is the story of a girl called Maresi who lives on this island called Menos, and the island called Menos is populated solely by women called sisters and girls called novices. That's the only colony on the island. They have their own ecosystem in a sense. They have their own religion, they have different houses that deal with different things that you need when you're self-sufficient on an island. There's a house that does the food, there's a house that deals with like the bathhouses, there's a house that deals with that is a dormitory, there's a house that's a school, and it's such a cool system. I really felt like when I was exploring this island for the first time and learning about the way they work, I felt like I was reading Harry Potter again. Like, that's how magical this world was again when I was reading it. And Maresi is a novice who's actually not assigned to a sister yet. She's still kind of roaming around doing all different sorts of jobs. This group of women value knowledge basically above everything else. They have this huge library of knowledge, and it's super well protected. This island has lore, this island has history, and you follow Maresi as they start having to fend off sort of dark elements that are taking over the island. This is a really short story, but it's so good and I was so mind blown. I really want to pick up the sequel, I just don't know where, because this was originally written in Finnish. Is that a language? Finnish? Yeah, Finnish. I might bump this up to 5 if I let it marinate, but the thing that's keeping me from putting it to 5 right now is that the writing is pretty juvenile, and I know that it's because the protagonist is a young person, but I feel like at some points it becomes a little bit too juvenile. I will say, trigger warning, this does deal with rape, and it's not like graphic rape. I feel like an 11-year-old, 10-year-old could read this and not be, you know, hurt in a sense. So if you have an 8-year-old or you are 8, I highly recommend it. It's a YA, although it reads like a children's book, I think. I want to say it's one of my my faves. I've hit the jackpot. These 2 books, freaking amazing. The last book that I read in the month of July was We Were Liars. I was an idiot and spilled my coffee on it. So now it looks wonky. It's like bumpy on the sides. I don't care. This was pretty big on BookTube back in like 2014-15, and it was like one of my favorite books of all time at some point. I remember reading it for the first time and just being like, if you haven't read this book, like read it. It's crazy. It psychs your mind out. It's like a mystery thriller, but also kind of contemporary. It's very similar to Mara Dyer. Reading this for the second time is just as interesting as reading it for the first time, because knowing what you know, you pick up on things, and it's just such a mind-blowing experience. I don't know if I would give it 5 stars the second time around. I think I might give it 4. I want to give it 4.5. Probably 4.5. The writing, you need to get used to it. It's kind of emo. It like reminds you of a Tumblr girl in 2013 being like, ooh. You get used to it and it slaps after that. I don't want to tell you what this book is about. I think you should pick it up if you haven't heard of it. It's E. Lockhart. I love E. Lockhart. I just love her stories for some reason. Every single time she just like gets me. Those were all the books. Wow, I'm so quick. I did that in 14 minutes. Oh my god, I'm a savage. No way. I feel like I might have forgotten a book. Did I forget a book? No way I forgot a book. I'm just a savage. Currently, I am reading The Lies of Locke Lamore, which is another adult fantasy, and I'm freaking loving it. I'm hitting so many jackpots, bro. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.